Let me go verify. All right, beautiful. Well, welcome everyone. Um, this is specifically for our Intern Pro community. So the thousands across uh, our organization. We're here live with Logan from Compass Visa, immigration expert, been doing this for years. There's been a lot of, I guess, controversy since last Friday, seeing where things are at, and we're trying to get some clarity. We have a lot of questions for you, so we shared those in advance. Um, could you give us a quick introduction, share a little bit about who you are?
Totally. Hey, everybody, I'm Logan. I am a Canadian founder living in Seattle, running Compass Visas, where we help, you know, tons of people with high talent visas mostly. So O1s, EB1s, but we also do the full range of employment visas. So lots of H1Bs and other visas, helping students and other folks, you know, begin to get work visas and green cards. Um, Quick backstory on me is I moved down to Seattle about 10 years ago to start a drone company. Left that company, wanted to stay and kick around in the US still. And so had to go through this process myself of going from a B1 tourist visa to a TN visa to an O1 visa. And I think I've done four O1 visas since then. So have been on sort of both sides of the table as a visa recipient and now somebody that's helped thousands of people get their visas. Um, and yeah, I am not a lawyer. So this is not legal advice. If you end up working with us on any sort of visa application, we do have attorneys that can help you out and offer legal advice, but that's not what this is. We're just talking about the news today and trying to sort out what's happened in the last week.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I've been trying to keep up, obviously following a lot of legal experts, and it seems like everyone's just a little confused, including the government. From the moment it was released on Friday, we've now had some supposed clarification. Um, maybe we can talk through that because it seems like it's contradictory. So what is the latest?
Yeah, I could probably run us through like a timeline of events and we could talk through it. Um, the big news, of course, was Friday. Trump signed this proclamation that any H-1B was going to require a $100,000 fee.
Yeah.
So about a 25x increase in fees being paid by the employer, and that it was going into effect immediately. Um, and it wasn't totally clear who was going to be affected by that. So
Well, I think that's the
um,
big one, right?
totally. And
Yeah.
we are closer now, but we still don't have total clarity until we see like exactly what the rules are, the mechanisms of how this works, and what sort of legal challenges are going to pop up to this. Um, so we're very early, but we have more clarity now than we did, I guess, Friday night when this came out.
Yeah, we're still within the week, which is kind of crazy. And yeah. So, you want to go through the timeline or I mean, there's so many questions that have come up already. Like it's
Yeah, I think the timeline could be helpful,
yeah.
because I can share some information and uh, yeah, let's run through the timeline. So Friday night, $100,000, and it looks something like this. I've pulled out a few pieces of that proclamation. So it said that entry is going to be restricted to any aliens whose petitions were not accompanied by this $100,000,
Hmm.
going into effect immediately or I guess in 2 days. It was on the 21st. So it was like Sunday night, which immediately had all the big tech companies, pulling people back from overseas before this went into effect.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other really interesting language is applies to everybody, all aliens, sorry, shall not apply to any alien, people working for a company, or people in an industry if they are working in the national interest
Yeah.
and don't pose a threat to security or welfare. And that's yeah, as a spoiler, like that's doing some heavy lifting, and we don't know exactly what that looks like.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is ambiguous at best, and yeah, please go on. I mean, it's just like it's I've been going through this obviously very closely. You have as well, and it's like what does that even mean?
Yeah. So I think it's helpful to like when we're looking at this, there's a lot of language here that is not um, easy to understand. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to take a moment to like just share some definitions from like immigration definitions to guide the rest of this conversation.
That'd be amazing.
Um, so it, I'm assuming many of the people listening to this are on student visas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Many people don't know the difference between a visa and their status. So typically, a visa is the document that you get that allows you to enter, or maybe if you're Chinese, exit a country.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that grants a status inside the US. So you come, you go to the consulate, have your interview, maybe get your F1 or your H1B visa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can then enter the US on that status and will generally stay on that status until you take some other legal procedure to change. So you can change from an F1 status to an H1B status in the US or an H1B to permanent resident status. That doesn't necessarily change your visa. You then have to go back to a consulate to have another interview, get your visa sticker, and then re-enter the US under that new visa.
Right.
Um, it's kind of nitpicky, but when we're dealing with legislation like this, it's really important
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't clear in the original proclamation whether this applies to people holding a visa or people entering the country on a visa or people on a current status. And the details really matter here.
Well, I
Um,
mean, just to jump in, I mean, every corporation, the major corporations, sent out letters to their H-1B holders saying, "Hey, if you're out of the country, get back." So that was the interpretation from, I would say, every major company. So yeah. Anyway, I just kind of like obviously we're a little farther along, but yeah, please continue.
a little bit. And the terms national interest, I kind of mentioned them in the last slide. This is like a subjective, well, usually in um, national interest waiver cases, which is another type of sort of immigration petition, we have these national interest um, determinations being made, which are subjective analysis, case by case basis on whether or not an individual or the work that they are doing is beneficial to the US.
Hmm.
Um, and the language that we have here, and we'll talk more about this later, um, makes it seem like they will be determining whether certain companies, certain industries, or individual people are going to be working in the national interest. So it's kind of a broadening of that national interest language, um, and there's a lot to be figured out there. Some other definitions that I think are helpful. Permanent residency is something to distinguish against visa holders. Um, if you have a visa, you are generally like on an H-1B visa, you are a temporary worker. An F-1 visa holder is a student that is temporarily allowed in the country to
Hmm.
study.
Hmm.
Shifting to permanent residency is much closer to being a citizen. It allows you to travel in and out as much as you want, work wherever you want, and with a few distinctions against citizens, where you can get drafted and you can vote and a few other things. Um, Intent is a really important word that comes up all the time, um, and it really means like when you are crossing the border, what is your intent at that specific moment? is that to come in and apply for immigration benefits, to apply for, say, permanent residency or marry somebody and apply for um, your green card then? Or is it
Hmm.
really to come in and study or to work or do something temporary? It's important to note that when we're talking about visas, they have immigrant or non-immigrant intent. Your intent can change. Um, the practice here is like if you enter the US on, let's just say, an O1 visa or an F1 visa where it's non-immigrant intent, after you've been in the country for 90 days, your intent can magically change. Maybe you really enjoyed going to Disneyland or you met some really cool people. Now your mindset has shifted and you
Hmm.
can change your mind and apply for this stuff. So if it comes up later, um, it's helpful to know what intent is. And I think a lot of people who are visa holders get really worried about whether they're on a non-immigrant or immigrant intent visa, and generally it doesn't really matter um, because of that sort of 90-day period. And then
Got it.
finally, the last one, which is super relevant to this conversation, is prevailing wage.
Yeah.
Um, and so H-1B, an H-1B visa is for people in specialty occupations
Hmm.
that by definition, if you are an H-1B holder, you are being paid at or above the prevailing wage, which
Hmm.
means for your job title in the county that you are in, you are being paid above the average worker for that level of experience.
Right.
So let's just say you're a, I don't know, research engineer, I think is the example I use for this later. You would have to be paid not at the top end of all research engineers, but research engineers in your area
Hmm.
at the level of experience that you have. And so, if you've seen any of the discourse um, online over the last week, like the big, I don't know, culture war is over like H-1Bs being, cheap labor, imported
Right.
labor, and like by definition, there is some fraud in the H-1B program, but by definition, all these H-1B earners are being paid above sort of like their local average. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
thought
Well,
I'd
we'll
get into
we'll
that.
we'll get into the tiered. Trust me. There's plenty of questions on the tiered approach for H1B coming up too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for bearing through that.
No, it's important. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, so this was the original one that Trump came out with Friday night, and we've been through this and like kind of vague. And then the Secretary of Commerce came out and said, no, no, it's not 100K one time, it's 100K annually. And that just threw more confusion and panic
Hmm.
into this whole situation. This was followed up shortly by a very official tweet and announcement by the press secretary to clarify that it's not an annual fee, it's a one
Hmm.
time fee. Clarify that it's not for all H-1B visa holders. It is for people that are coming up in the lottery.
Right.
Um, and so I think like this took a lot of panic out of the room. If you were abroad, you didn't need to scramble to come back right
Well,
away. If you're a
I,
current visa holder, you're not going to be charged with this 100K.
which brings up an interesting question, like why are you releasing this on a Friday, saying it's relevant for a Sunday, when in reality, if this is the case, it would be end of March, April 26, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
something we can talk about. I'm just like making sure I'm following this. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting to have something go into effect immediately, right away, be ambiguous and like a shockingly high fee attached to it for a lottery system that is, still sort of being worked out, and we'll talk more about that.
yeah,
And 5 months away. Like,
right. Okay, okay. Just want to make sure I'm also following this.
yeah, maybe wonder what else was happening in the news that they didn't want to be seen.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea to take a look behind the curtain sometimes.
Um, all right, I'll take my tinfoil hat off. But yeah, this is kind of how most of us felt Friday night checking our phones.
No, absolutely. I could relate. There was so much over the weekend, like so much question, and every expert was pretty much with those question marks flying around their head too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, in the sort of like legal spheres where I hang out occasionally, like many lawyers with many very different interpretations of who this all applied to. Um, and so while we were still sort of figuring that out, another announcement came out. This one had been rumored for a while, but it was about changes to the H-1B program.
Hmm.
Um, I think, my interpretation is that our administration has to some degree bought into the cheap labor idea and wanted to change the H-1B to favor highly paid labor. And so what they have put into effect or proposed is that folks with higher, let's just see, folks with higher wage levels will have higher odds in the lottery. So to
Hmm.
understand that, we have to take a look at the different wage levels. And as I alluded to before, with the H-1B explanation and the prevailing wage explanation, every H-1B occupation is a specialty occupation and has a specialty occupation code. So for this one, for software developers, you have the 151252 occupation code. And for Maricopa County, these are the different wages that would have to be met for somebody to apply for an H-1B, depending on their level of experience. Um, so generally, when you're thinking about wage levels, it's like how much experience do you have in your career? If your average software developer in this area would require um, a bachelor's degree, that's typical as it is a specialty occupation. So pretty much all specialty occupations require a bachelor's degree, but some require a master's or a PhD. Um, then we generally look at like years of experience. So if you're just graduating, you're probably going to be a level one. If you've got maybe a few years of experience, you might be level two. Level three and four, you start to hit sort of mid career or like, 5, 10, 15 years of experience around level four is probably around 10 years. And it's kind of subjective. There's not an exact science to figuring this out. Um, but if you're, a software developer in Maricopa County, this is probably what you're looking at in terms of wage levels. Now, what the government has done is said it's more important for us to have more level three and level four wage levels and high income earners and more experienced professionals. So we're going to give more lottery entries to folks that hit those and fewer lottery entries to people at level one and two. So here's some analysis that somebody else did. I think this is from the Institute for Progress. I'm not exactly sure right now. Um, what you can see here is that they, previous to this change, anybody entering the lottery had the same likelihood of getting selected in the lottery,
Hmm.
regardless of their wage level. They've
Hmm.
now shifted it to higher chances at the top end. At a level two, you are still about roughly the same, maybe slightly improved. The
Hmm.
big change is like if you're a level one um, earner, your likelihood of winning the lottery has dropped dramatically. Also of note and not captured here is master's degree and PhD degree holders have a separate sort of lottery entry in addition to this, and they get extra, um, essentially extra lottery chances, so slightly higher odds. And that has not changed with this um, new
So
process.
that was almost the previous filtration is like if you had a master's, you got this extra opportunity. Now they're changing it into this tiered approach and they're like saying, hey, if you're now it's based on wage as well as that master's. So that's
Exactly.
very relevant to our community. Everyone on Intern Pro has a master's or a PhD. So
Yeah. So you're still like have those slightly higher odds in that separate master's cap draw. Um, and here's maybe like, yeah, here's sort of like the outcome that is expected of this, and maybe why they were doing this in the first place.
Hmm.
The H-1B program has been battling fraud for a number of years. The people that are often pointed at as the problem are the big outsourcing companies like Tata, Infosys, Cognizant,
Hmm.
um, often referred to as body shops. They're taking folks from foreign countries, bringing them in to fill roles at, depending on who you talk to, either they are cheap labor or they are being paid more than, say, early career folks, the level one folks.
Hmm.
So this is, depending on who you talk to, going to actually hurt the all the other companies, because let's just say level one folks are, who say Facebook and Microsoft and Amazon are hiring fresh out of school
Yeah.
and classifying them as level ones, where um, maybe folks with 3 to 5 years of experience are coming to work for these big outsourcing companies, and they are being paid more than super early career folks. And so this is part of the conversation now is, did we try to fix the cheap labor problem, but actually exacerbate it by making it harder for international students and folks coming out of school,
Hmm.
and easier for these other companies that are filling other roles.
Yeah,
Uh,
and my understanding is a lot of these companies that are exploiting it are putting their, locations in very cheap areas and obviously exploiting the system in that regards from what I've been reading. And it's also something we should talk through is how does this impact startups? Like, I mean, there's a lot of conversation around large corporations, but there's a lot of startups that are going to be impacted by this as well. So as we continue the conversation, I'd like to, bring that into it.
yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work with startups,
Hmm.
and well, I'll say that, like, the a lot of startups hire students, and those students are level one wage earners.
Hmm.
The thing about these wages is, like, they're localized. So even if you are a well-funded startup in San Francisco, for example, like paying a developer that 150K salary, they still might be only a level one. Whereas if they're in, I don't know, Detroit or uh, somewhere else, like that, the wages are very different depending on where you are. And it's a good point that these outsourcing companies are sort of using that to their advantage to place people in the US, but in often low cost of living and low wage areas to perform that job locally.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's not a perfect system by any means.
Yeah. Well,
Um, okay, yeah,
yeah. No, this is perfect. Yeah, we can keep going.
okay. So to summarize this, higher earnings will equal more chance of getting selected. This is again localized and normalized based on your occupation code and the area that you are living. It is not, as some people have said, just like, the highest earners get visas. It is still distributed evenly across industries, across job titles. There
Hmm.
was some concern when they were talking about this a few months ago that all of the H-1B visas were going to go to Facebook and Amazon employees, and maybe finance jobs where people are making 500K plus.
Hmm.
Um, there is still actually a lottery, and we've talked through how that works.
So,
Important. Oh, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
let me just jump in here because like the biggest question we have from our community is, if you're having F1, you're on OPT or STEM OPT, and you enter the lottery here in next one coming up in 26, how are they impacted?
Yeah. So let's go back to this one. Um, you do still have the Masters cap draw, which is 20,000 lottery entries that will be drawn against. So that's good. The rest of it now comes down to like what wage level you're going to be.
Hmm.
And if you're a level one wage earner, and I think I've got an example a little further ahead that we could use, your odds of getting selected are not great. They've fallen from about 30% to 15, 16%. Um, and so if you're looking at, you know, you have, say, STEM OPT and OPT, you've got 3 years at 16% likelihood each time. Those are not fantastic odds of getting an H-1B selection. So you should, one, know that, and then two, think about how you can improve your odds, which essentially is like, can you jump up to a level two wage, to effectively double your likelihood of selection back to what it was previously. And then three, we can talk about this later on. Are there options outside of the H-1B that you can look at and, kind of control your own destiny or extend your time in the US a little bit more?
No,
Um,
absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
other thing is, and is that my next slide? Yeah, like this is what we know now. It's been 7 days, and there's still like 5 months to go before all of this actually goes into effect. Um, California is supposedly weighing their ability to challenge these new rules because they are going to be sort of outsized effect on them due to the concentration of tech there. So like take everything here with a grain of salt, knowing that this is likely to get negotiated down. There's going to be carve outs and caveats. The national interest thing still needs to be sorted out. Whether this passes through the courts still remains to be seen.
Well,
Um,
you did you hear that the I believe it's a National Chamber of Commerce is getting together with large corporations and getting backing to obviously take this to court as well, which is kind of a big deal. I don't think, I mean, anyway, that's large corporations getting together and going against this as well. So I don't think it's going to be what we see today.
yeah,
Obviously, there's going to be changes, and it's just the question is, what is that, and how does that impact, our community? How does that impact people on F1s? How does that impact people on current H1Bs?
yeah,
And that's what we're covering. But I'm like, yeah, just what does this actually mean, and what do we know? So,
yeah. There's still tons of questions, but if we were to assume that what's happened over the last week is what goes into effect, we believe that only new H-1B lottery winners are going to be affected. If you are a current H-1B holder, or have, because October 1st is when the new H-1B lottery winners who won the lottery this spring begin
mhm.
their new jobs under their H-1Bs. Those people are not affected. They've already won their lottery,
Okay.
secured it, and aren't susceptible to that 100K fee.
So from a
Uh,
travel perspective, if you won, you're fine as far as we
yeah,
know today.
if you're abroad and going for your visa interview or going to change status
Hmm.
to an H-1B holder in October, you're going to be fine to travel home,
Okay.
take your visa interview, come back in, and not get dinged for 100K.
Okay.
Um, there are still lots of questions, of course. Um, like who is exempt from the fee? What industries are national interest industries? What companies are, I don't know, going to pay some money to not be hit by this? Um, what does an individual have to do to show that they're working in the national interest? That all remains to be seen, and we don't know if we're going to get, legal rulings or policy on that, or if this is going to drop in, go into effect, and it'll be sort of up to the legal community to persuade the consulate or USCIS on a case by case basis. I'm assuming we'll get some more guidance on this pretty quickly, though.
So I'll just jump in with another question from the community, and this is probably
Sure.
our second most common question that we have, is really around if you're on an F1, you're on Intern Pro, you're working with an accredited university, you're obviously doing OPT right now. Can they safely travel home for the holidays, say, and come back? How does this, do we know, is there clarity around, F1 students today?
As it pertains to this H-1B policy, yes. F1 students should be safe to travel at the moment, and they're not going to get hit with this fee. This fee is only for the folks that are going to win this upcoming lottery and then travel and then they'll have to pay that fee. Um, Now, we've had a lot of issues with international students and this administration over the past 6 months.
Hmm.
So while everything should be good for international students, the guidance that we are giving to pretty much any visa holder right now, especially international students from schools that this administration has picked on,
Hmm.
is to be careful and selective with your travel.
Yeah.
Um, if you're driving up to Canada for one day to do something that isn't super important, like, every visa crossing brings some chance of like something happening. And with this administration, like the best course of action is to be selective about what you actually really need to do. And if it's not super important, then like maybe consider skipping it or talking with an attorney about the particulars of your immigration history and situation before you do that. So
Well,
like general guidance is yes, but it's also like be safe and be smart.
maybe don't introduce variables unless you feel like it's, weigh those out and like you said, get some legal counsel before you do that. I mean,
Yeah.
so I just want to clarify this because we have people on STEM OPT. Maybe they got an H-1B approved, and they want to travel internationally. So what I understand from what you're sharing is that if they were approved in this previous one for October 1st start, they should be
Yes.
fine. But if they were approved or I guess they couldn't have been approved now for the next one, but if it comes up or they're in the process, they probably should not be traveling right now.
That that gets a little tricky because um well, one, we don't have any upcoming lottery folks that have won it. So
Yeah,
nobody's really susceptible to it yet.
right.
Um Except for folks that are getting cap exempt visas outside the lottery. And
Hmm.
that is certainly possible with folks that are getting H-1Bs through their university or through nonprofits.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have great guidance on that right now, so I think if you're holding a cap exempt visa, you might want to just like chill for a week before you decide to travel either way,
Yeah.
until we know a little bit more. Um, I'm not sure if that actually answered your question or if I took
No,
it
it really
in a
did.
different
It's like
direction.
it's yeah. I mean, there's so many unique situations here, and cap exempt, like you said, is not tied to the lottery. You could be outside of that, and there's unique situations. But if someone is on STEM OPT, but as far as we know today, if they got it in the previous lottery, they should be fine on traveling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's just say going forward, and this is like kind of a big hypothetical what if situation, like there if you win the lottery, you are not automatically like on that visa.
Hmm.
Going back to that conversation about visa status versus, actually holding the visa. So there in the future could be a situation where I won the lottery, I'm traveling to my home country as a
Hmm. say
say STEM OPT holder. I'm going to re-enter the country under STEM OPT because I'm not going to the consulate getting that H-1B
Hmm.
um, sticker visa to enter under
Hmm.
H-1B. Part of this is like we don't actually totally know where this 100K fee is going to be provided either. Is it going to happen when they submit the filing fees for the petition,
Hmm.
or is this going to happen at the consulate when somebody who's physically getting their visa to re-enter under that H-1B. And then, like, as the question says here, like, what happens if the company pays 100K, the person is approved for their H-1B, they go to their consulate and then
Mhm.
get denied there. Does the company get a 100K refund, or what happens there?
Right.
There's a lot to be worked out here, and yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting.
So I guess like, if we're talking about the payment here, some of the questions is around when does that actually trigger? Is it like, do we have clarity on that? Is it like when you're applying, can you still apply and say then you get it? Is that the point you have to pay? Like, is there any clarity around that?
Not yet. We and it's worth the H-1B lottery works. It's kind of like a two-phase application. So there is, going back to the slides here. There's the actual H-1B lottery itself,
Hmm.
where everybody's name goes into a hat, and then the level one wages will get pulled out, then the level two wages will get pulled out,
Hmm.
etc. And if you win that lottery, you then have the right to apply
Hmm.
for an H-1B. You have not got an H-1B at that point. You just have the right to submit all your information and the company's information along
Hmm.
with your lottery ticket to say, hey, I won the lottery, I'd like to apply for the H-1B. Almost certainly it's that second phase of submitting the petition where this 100K fee is probably going to come up, although it might make more sense for it to be at the consulate when you're going through the final sort of getting your H-1B. And that's the way at least one of these proclamations or tweets or clarifications were written, was that this would be happening um, under at like the at the consulate under that administration. So um,
So a
again,
couple,
like we're so
yeah,
early, we don't totally know, but it's unlikely to actually happen at the lottery drawing.
yeah. There's a couple questions that have come in just for clarification on whether
Sure.
filing for an F1 as an F1, filing for an H1B petition in 2026, it's pretty clear that that's when they're thinking whatever fee that gets finalized is what when
Yes.
it will come through.
Yes. Yeah.
So
The
right now it's 100. When it goes through the courts and everything else, who knows what it'll be, but there will be something in addition probably that will be applied in the 26 F1, I mean F1 to H1B
yes.
application. Yeah, okay.
Yes. And so, like, at the risk of repeating myself way too many times, it's been a week. We don't know a whole lot yet. There's new stuff coming out seemingly every day. So um, try not to freak out about this stuff too much. I know it's
Yeah.
like scary. Like, I'm a visa holder. I don't like crossing the border. I don't like planning travel, thinking about this stuff. It's always a little scary and intimidating. Um, but it's a long way to go until we get, more clarity and any of this actually goes into effect.
The quote from Reagan comes to mind. I'm with the government. I'm here to help. Probably the scariest words you'll hear. It's like, pretty much you want to avoid the federal government in your life as much as possible. But unfortunately, you have to engage them. So a little
Yeah,
comedy there. But so some definitions that
sure.
people are asking about. So we have new petition and change of status and maybe a transfer. Are those um,
Great.
yeah, could we get a little clarity on those as far as you
Okay.
know?
So a petition is generally the thing that you're submitting to the government to ask for an approval
Hmm.
of this visa. So using my personal example, I was on a TN visa. I then wanted to move to an O1 visa. I submit an O1 petition. That goes to USCIS here in the US. An adjudicator reviews that and then says, yes, you can we approve your petition for an O1 visa. What that then does when you have an approved petition means you will either go for a change of status, which is moving from one status to another while you are in the US. You could go from F1 to H1B, F1 to um, O1, something like that. Or you can stay on your same status, um, even if a petition is approved, and it doesn't go into effect until you re-enter the country under that new visa. So, where I switched from TN to O1, I could have gone uh, back to Canada, came in with my new O1 paperwork, entered the country on O1, and that's when that change would happen. So, um, I hope that covers like change of status and what the petition is. The petition is obviously different from the consular interview and getting your visa through the interview process, where you bring your passport, answer a few questions, drop it off, collect it a few days later with a new sticker inside it, and then enter the US.
So,
Now,
yeah, no, a question
go
though
ahead.
and this is my confusion here. If you're on an F1 and you're going to an H1B
Hmm.
and it's a change of status,
Hmm.
is that, I mean, obviously that's what would trigger this fee because you have to go through an application process to change status, and that's where they're triggering this fee.
This was one of the things that was super unclear.
Okay,
And
okay.
and now the language seems to point to this is going to affect new lottery winners, but we don't know whether the fee is happening at the with the petition submission or at visa entry. And it's possible that an F1 student could win the H1B lottery and they would be subject to this, but um, they would win the lottery, they'd wait until October, next October, obviously,
Hmm.
switch from their F1 to an H1B while in the US, begin working under that H1B, potentially stay 3 years under that H1B, extend their status for another 3 years, and maybe not trigger this 100K fee ever if this fee only goes into effect when you are at the consulate getting your visa and re entering.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know the mechanism of this 100K payment. It has been very unclear, where that gets paid to and when it gets paid.
Mhm.
There were also releases that were unclear about like change of status. I think I don't have the exact wording now, but I was arguing with people online all weekend about what this would actually mean. My interpretation and I believe like the intent behind this doesn't lead me to believe that that scenario that I laid out is likely, where somebody could come in on an H1B and then switch through a change of status to an H1B and avoid the the payment that way because there's a change of status. So if I'm being unclear, there was some train of thinking that if you were doing a change of status to an H1B, this wouldn't apply to you, which
Right.
sounds great for students because you're like, okay, I'm already in the country, I'm on OPT, I'll do change of status. This
Hmm.
doesn't apply to me. Then I'm going to have an H1B and I can travel back and forth. Um, but that would be great for tons of people. I think that's unlikely because that same line of thinking would allow anybody who currently has a B1 visa, which is a 10-year visa to enter the country for up to 6 months, could come in after they have won the H1B lottery. They could come in, change of status to that H1B, and it would effectively be a backdoor to avoiding that 100K fee. And I don't
That's
think that that's
that's
likely to happen.
unlikely. Yeah, that's unlikely.
Yeah. And so that's why I think that change of status thing isn't going to work because it's not a special carve out. It's like I think poorly written release doing some heavy lifting there and some people being a little optimistic about that.
That makes sense. Yeah, we're week one. Let's see where it goes.
Fred, do you want to talk about Project Firewall? You're following that more closely than I am.
Yeah, it's interesting times because this is, I think, the first time in a very, I mean, ever that there's now proactive. Um, DOL is now proactively looking into people on visas or on H-1Bs at employers, and now doing active interviews. So Project Firewall was announced on September 19th, and it was kind of a little bit of a shock because in the past it's always been based on report. Someone got reported, there was some issue, they go and investigate, they'll do an audit. Um, I mean, our program's gone through a DOL audit, got approved. Where basically our entire program was built from the ground up to be federally approved. Like this is what we do, and you know, getting those blessings and stuff. So when you go in and there's companies that think they're very clever and they're trying to bypass um, whatever. They're getting someone that's on a F1 visa and they're saying, hey, just come volunteer for us. I mean, completely illegal. If you're a for profit and you're trying to get someone to work for you for free, that's just not going to go, guys. Like, and you're going to get caught now. The chances are much higher now with like Project Firewall. They're going to be far more active in doing proactive audits. And I don't know what triggers it. I don't know. Like in the past, it's always been like someone comes to them, gives them some information, and they'll go check it out. At this point, I am actually. It's also very new. I know very little, and I don't think they're going to say a whole lot about it, other than announcing the fact that we're now going to proactively approach employers and start verifying people on visas. And that's pretty much all I know. But it's a massive change from what they've been doing in the past.
Couple of thoughts on that. Typically, the way that you demonstrate that your visa is like still valid, or the legal term is maintenance of status. Sorry, something's caught in my throat.
Hmm.
um, Demonstrating maintenance of status, or that like you are still properly on, say, your H-1B or other visa, um, is that you are getting paid for the job that you said that you were going to do. So crossing the border, the the officer there can ask you to see your last two paychecks.
Hmm.
The last two paychecks is like kind of the de facto way to prove that you've been maintaining your status, because I can show last month I received two paychecks that match what I'm supposed to be earning. Um, and that's how you prove this, like potentially crossing the border. And if you were to file, say, a renewal or a change of employer or any other visa petition, if the petition is reliant on you having maintained your status properly, you generally show your last two paychecks. I could see them um, monitoring this much more closely with international travelers, so that if you're coming in and you say, oh, yeah, I'm on OPT, I'm working for this company, they could be like, are you getting paid for that? Can you prove that? Um, that to me seems like maybe the easiest avenue to um, sort
Trigger.
of investigate this and trigger this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I think the difference here also is that usually the departments are a little separated. You have USCIS, you have DOL, and I don't think there's a whole lot of overlap, but I feel like there might be quite a bit more now. And so DOL is actually doing these audits, and they're coming
Oh,
out to these
interesting.
employers. Yeah, they're coming out to do these audits with their employers. So and honestly, I think this is a great thing. I think for those that are exploiting, international students, people on visas, whatever. I think this is. I don't say this often, but I feel like this is actually a good move. I think this is a good thing because there are people that just don't know. Like, oh, I didn't know I was being exploited. Like, yeah, you should be paid. Like, unless you're working with a university, unless you're working on a nonprofit, there's very specific things, where you can do this, and otherwise you should be getting paid. So if you're not, anyone out there, like, know that that's wrong. But
Yeah.
now the proactive aspect, it's kind of interesting. From a USCS perspective, there's certain trigger points. There's obviously coming across a border. There's banking applications. There's changes in status. There's trigger points where they can go, I need more data. I need to figure things out. And those kind of make sense. But then these are kind of be like, I don't know. Like, what is the trigger? Because in the past, it's always been like, hey, I something's going on here. Go look at it. Now it's just, what is it, random? They're just going to be like, oh, or like, are there machine learning algorithms that are going through these things and going like,
I was
hey, here,
just gonna say, are they
yeah,
scraping, job sites to look for unpaid internships and crack down on people?
Maybe. Anyway, that's all I know. There's not a lot that they're publishing, but they did make a statement, and they're saying they're going to be very proactive on that. So that's a change.
But I guess like important for this community is that you guys have already been sort of cleared and
Yeah.
passed this hurdle. So um, yeah,
Yeah,
if
thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we built this from the ground up. It wasn't to, I mean, it was based on the platform that was approved, gone through the audits. This is as legit as you get. You work with accredited universities, and that's that's how you can do it officially. So if companies want to work with amazing talent, InternPro.ai, it's like if you get an amazing company, like you get phenomenal talent and they get an opportunity to continue to work with the university and build their resume.
yeah,
So
great.
I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. Thanks.
It's important. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's lots of folks listening right now that have that question. Um, we could cover these other. I think we covered these actually pretty well. Somebody had this question I saw before about how do I know if my H-1B job actually has a specialty occupation code? That's a little too niche maybe for this format, but if you are curious about what wages you might get paid or how to move up to a level two wage, the thing to do is Google FLC Wage Wizard, pop your occupation code as best as you can sort of fit yourself into one, put in your county, and it'll spit out the different wages for you. And do I have an example? I did have an example of that, right? Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
it'll spit out this page relative to the job that you put in and the county that you enter, and you can kind of see, hey, maybe I should, if my employer is going to pay me 105,000, maybe I should see if I can bump up to 111 to, meet that next wage level. Um, I think that would be something smart for lots of folks to do as they are interviewing.
No, that's a good point. And I guess, I mean, from our community's perspective, I mean, what are the things to do? It's like, does this wage, imply that they should be looking at different areas? Maybe everyone was in San Francisco or the Bay Area, and they're like, having a hard time there. Maybe they start considering the Midwest or something, and
Hmm.
then they can suddenly, maybe have a higher tier and get a better chance. I don't know. Yeah, at this point with our current job market, I think anything is great, but it's like maybe from a perspective of if I'm looking for things, be open to other areas.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with the H-1B program is like there are lots of arbitrage opportunities. Um, so like one of the examples I shared on Twitter a day or two ago was like in San Francisco, a software developer getting paid 150K would be a level one wage, but if that same job was classified as a computer systems analyst, they're a level three wage.
Hmm.
So subtle shifts in job duties and positioning of this job could 3x the likelihood of this person getting selected in the H-1B lottery. Similarly, like you could move a county over or to a lower cost of living area, and that 150K wage is probably level four um, in some other places. So
And that's based on where they're working. Like, so if
correct.
most people are remote these days, so if they happen to live somewhere, that doesn't have the impact on it. It's where the company's doing work, or how does that work when we're so remote these days? Do you know?
It's where the person is physically located.
Ooh, okay.
And so a question I have, um, you know, I think it's interesting to look at the policy that they have and see how is this going to get gamed because there are too many smart people in this industry for it not to get gamed, and we've seen the outsourcing companies game the hell out of this over the
Hmm.
last 10 years. Changing of like job codes, like I mentioned, is one that I expect we'll see, a rise in computer systems analysts versus software developers. And I'm sure there's a ton of other similar ones where if we shift you over a job code, we can increase the likelihood of your selection. And The
Now,
historical data is going to be crazy to look at in like a year.
is that on the company? That's the company that uses that code, or how does that apply?
Yes, that's a kind of hard question to answer. Um, the occupation code is at the level of the job that the person is doing. So remember that the H-1B is like for a specialty occupation code, um, which is and the H-1B ties the person to the occupation code to the
Hmm.
company. It does not matter what industry the company itself is in. Um, so
But this
if
would be on the company when say a company applies, they're defining what that position is and what that code is. And
Yeah, and
so,
most employers don't actually know. It's the legal team that is handling this and looking at the job description and saying like, I think we could get them to be a level two at this occupation code, or maybe they're a level three at that occupation code.
got it.
And there's a sort of process of looking at the person's transcripts and the job duties and their work experience
Hmm.
to position them in a different occupation code. But it is not an exact science. And so I think that's one area that's going to be gamed. I think it will be likely that we see more folks like, hey, can we move you to, I don't know, rural whatever while we apply for this visa, and then we'll move you over to San Francisco, New York, Phoenix, the
Yeah,
metro area afterwards once your visa's secured. Um,
it's going to be a boom in the Midwest. Like,
Yeah, we're likely going to see a rise in like people filing for H-1Bs and then amending them after they've won the lottery to move to new locations. Now,
interesting.
when you do move to a new location, you have to pay the prevailing salary in that location. But if we're just talking about how to win the lottery, there are interesting ways to increase your odds.
So, quick question came in. There's a couple that popped in relevant to what we're talking about.
Sure.
If someone's not able to find a code, for the OFLC wage search, what do you recommend? Like, just do something close, or what's?
So the occupation code is not the job title. It's important to separate those two.
Hmm.
So yeah, you want to find something where the job duties under that occupation code match what you're doing. Is that person live by any chance? And can they like tell us either a job title or what they do? I'd be curious to like maybe do a little bit of live problem solving on that.
Well, now that you've actually asked, we're slightly delayed, so we will have our team get back to you on that,
Okay.
and we'll get So one of the things that's come up, and it's been pretty major impact, and I'd like to talk about this now, is we've had grads on our platform. They had people willing to sponsor, had the H-1B, they got the job, they're ready to go, literally this Friday. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're going to rescind this until we know what's going on. The uncertainty was like, and we've heard this over and over where people were like, literally up to Friday, and they were like, okay, you know what? We're rescinding this offer. And specifically because this happened. Yeah, I mean, have you seen this? What's happening? Like, I feel like the industry doesn't know. There's so much uncertainty that it's just easier to say no at this point, which is awful for pretty much anyone that's going through this process.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah,
It's not something I've seen with like our client base yet, but
I would
I mean,
love to hear some recommendations. Like, I
yeah,
mean,
I'm trying to think. I'm like, one, like if there's one message that I'm sharing like in online and in this format in this webinar, like let's take a deep breath, let's wait, let's see what actually happens here. Probably a pretty good likelihood that, when it comes to the lottery next year and this 100K fee, if there is one, that's going to be carved out to be a much smaller
yeah,
proportion of employers actually paying it. They might reposition this to just go after the outsourcing companies or companies with more than 10,000 employees or something like that. So it doesn't, you know, really affect small businesses or certain industries. So I think like one, take a breath, to stay in contact with that company, if they liked you enough to give you a job offer, 2 weeks ago, they hopefully would again in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. Um, and so like as this all gets sorted out, like try to work with them to see if it's a better position now. Um,
I
the
almost
other
feel like
thing,
we could share some of the like there's a lot of rumors, but share some of the reality and just say, based on what the government's saying, this isn't going to impact until next lottery. This is, here's the reality that we know. So if you're still interested in working with me, keep this in mind. Like this, yeah, I don't know. If you I almost feel like sharing some of the quote unquote facts, or at least what we know now, might be a good approach for people that are in this situation. But it's so tough because there's a lot of unknowns.
yeah, and I bring this slide up because for some people, like the H-1B just might not happen, and you're going to get your, say, 3 years of STEM OPT,
Hmm.
OPT and STEM to work for a company, and whether your odds are 15%, 33%, or 45%, like you might just not get it. And so you'll want to have backup plans. And um, generally, certain nationalities have some special visas, thinking of, the TN visa, the E3 visa, H1B. So if you're not Australian, Chilean, Canadian, Mexican, Singaporean, um, then you're kind of SOL on those visas
Hmm.
and probably want to have some knowledge of the O1 visa and the J1 visa as
Hmm.
ways to extend to something outside of the H1B. And then long term, moving towards these now green cards, these EB1s are green card applications. Um, Depending on where you were born, you may be able to also like, and there's, I imagine, lots of like PhDs, researchers, folks with publications in your community. So,
Hmm.
it's possible maybe if you were born outside of India that you could apply for an EB2 NIW now based on some of the research that you've done. And by the time your STEM OPT expires, you might have a green card in hand. Um, but
No,
otherwise,
that's a good
maybe
point.
O1 and J1 are the ones to look at first.
Yeah, from an alternative perspective, my understanding is, going down the EB path is more challenging. It's obviously more difficult, where an O1 is still difficult, but it's not as. And I mean, there's your people on our platform are probably closer to achieving an O1 than they actually know. And if
Yes.
they actually realize, what they were being judged on, they could probably start working on things, making sure that their publications are cited, getting engagement, the things that are necessary, from publishing to everything else, doing judging and all these other things. So I don't know. Do you have information on whether your website or something? Because I feel like there's two areas where people could, look to Compass and say what would be a grounded response for some of the people that are like maybe even just having like, hey, here's what we know, and maybe that's something they could share with these hiring managers that are, obviously concerned, or even something along these lines of like, hey, here's some alternatives. We could help you with an O1. Here's what you need to consider. I don't know. If there's anything like that, I'd love to share it with our community.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. I'm going to be doing more O1 specific webinars to like teach people that are maybe not quite ready to apply, but thinking about building criteria for one
Hmm.
in the future. I'm going to be doing some webinars on that where we kind of go through that visa high level and chat through profile building because it
Hmm.
is something that I've seen many people spend, 3 months, working on doing some conference talks or getting some media about them or joining some groups and essentially become qualified, like maybe not overnight but over 90 days is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So I'll be doing some of those soon, and probably like following my Twitter might be the best way to um, find out when I'm doing those. I also have a course that I did with the company Carry or carrymoney.com.
Hmm.
um, Fred, I don't know if there's a way to like paste a link into into the stream here or something, but there's a free course that I put together a couple of years ago. Um, it's probably the most comprehensive set of information on the
Hmm.
O1 and how to qualify for it. And I think that's like a really great starting point for anybody that wants to understand, you know, getting an O1 visa, whether it's like moving from a student visa or they want to start their own company or anything in between. It's kind of like covers everything you would need to know about O1s.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
and so, yeah, that's a great point for people
Well,
to get
yeah.
into.
Well, so if you share that with us, we'll make sure the entire community gets that, and we'll send that on out. And then, yeah, I mean, if there's enough, I'm assuming there's going to be plenty of interest. But if you'd like, I'd love to do a follow up just focused on O1. I mean, if that's of
Absolutely,
interest, yeah.
absolutely.
Um, see what else we have here for questions. Yeah. Looking through things. Yeah, there's a lot. I think we've covered a lot of the things. Talking compliance. Yeah. So, I mean, anything else? Oh, I'm sorry. What? Hold on one second. What that? Oh, yeah. Um, let's see. What do I got here? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing to affirm for everyone that's in our community that's on the platform that if you are using InternPro, you are compliant. It is legitimate. We've been audited. So that was one of the questions that came up, like, is being on the platform? And the answer is absolutely yes. If you're going through the platform, not only you as an employer that's using us, but also because of the ties to the university and, if addressing your STEM OPT, it is absolutely compliant. So, one other question that came up, this is an interesting one. Like when you're working, say someone is on OPT, but they're working for a company, what's the difference if they're doing W-2 or 1099? Have you seen any impact on that?
Okay, so this is like straying into legal guidance, but generally,
Just share what you've seen.
previously,
How about that?
yeah. In previous years, i.e., before this current administration, the government doesn't really care how you get paid so long as you can demonstrate that you are getting paid.
Hmm.
Um, Currently, the recommendation from, let's just say, the legal community at large is you want to do like the most straightforward, easy to understand, or as one of my recent customers called it, like, don't get cute. So, like, if you're an employee, just get paid on W-2 unless it's your business that you're
Hmm.
running, where it really makes sense to have it be an LLC
Hmm.
or your own business that you're running. Like, probably just be under the W-2 is the thing that makes the most sense. Now, if there's something I'm missing there, like, hit me up and we can talk through it. But
No, I mean, it's just
that's our guidance right now. Is like
it.
don't try to get cute with something to save 3% on taxes or anything like that. It's just not worth like the headache with this administration.
Yeah. I mean, so both are legitimate options. If you're doing it legitimately, 1099 is fine. If you're doing it legitimately, obviously, it's easier for people to understand a W-2 because that's like kind of mainstream. But as long as it's like what I'm hearing is if you're doing it the right way, it's fine. Just don't try to be cute.
Yeah, and I'll say like OPT, there's probably more ability for it to be 1099 than say H1B or a
Hmm.
visa petition where you are um, really tied to your employer
Hmm.
through that petition. Um, OPT is a little bit more flexible. I think like again, I don't know this person's situation. You could also talk to your school's DSO
Hmm.
and they may be able to give you some guidance there.
No, that's solid advice. Um, what else we got to cover? I feel like you've done a phenomenal job covering this.
Well, thank you, and you've guided excellently. Um, the only one we haven't talked about is like the J1 visa, and I only bring that up because like it's a good gap filler. If
Hmm.
your status is about to expire, you can get an a J1 to work for a company for a year. The requirements are generally pretty low. Um, so I think it's like often overlooked. And yeah, if you just need a year to maybe you didn't get the H1B, or your employer is not open to the 100K fee, you could say, hey, why don't we do a J1 for a year? I'll spend that year getting the qualifications for an O1, and then we
Hmm.
can skip all of this uncertainty and political, um,
Yeah.
situation on the H1B. So I think that's a good option for folks as well.
Can you clarify what a J1 is? Yeah.
J1 is a visa. There's like a whole bunch of different categorizations on it. I'm not an expert on it. It's something that's like handled between the Department of State and your company
Hmm.
and this other sponsoring entity. But essentially, it's a 1 year visa in business and tech. And um, our realm, it's usually a trainee visa for somebody early in their career to like learn the industry in America. So it's just a good 1 year option for people that are relatively early in their career.
Okay, that makes sense. So we have a question coming in here, and in what you've been working on, and I'm not sure if you've seen this, but what's the scenario for an I-797A versus a 797B for the current new ruling, and for anyone that's got approved for 25? And first off, I have to share, I have no idea what a 797A is, so if you do, that's
um,
wonderful.
yeah, I-797A is, I might be getting these backwards, so I'm going to just look at it. They're both approval notices. One
Okay.
is, I believe it's the I-797A, is like the green piece of paper that somebody gets when their uh, status has been changed, whereas an I-797B is, uh, hang on a second, I gotta go look at like my mailbox if I'm gonna figure that out.
Okay.
Ultimately, it doesn't. I don't know the total nature of this question, but I'll say it probably doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Um, the I-797s, it is generally advised that you take your I-797 with you across the border when you're traveling,
Hmm.
or go to the consulate to do your interview. Um, you don't absolutely need to. Wherever you go, they can like look at your I-797, whether it's the original one or the other one, or one
Hmm.
in your email, or a copy, a scan of it. They can look it up wherever you are, and verify the details of your petition. Um, I really don't know if that answers the question, but that's like the usual question we get is like, do I need my I-797? What if I only have this one? What if I only have that one? In general, it doesn't totally matter.
So it sounds like there's no real change here. I mean, carry it with you if you're going across the border. I mean, it's make things smoother. It shouldn't impact anything. And for those people that joined a little bit later, I just want to do a final clarification. So for F1s moving to H1B in the 2026 lottery, what we understand today is a fee will apply. Right now, it's 100, depending on where the courts take it and so forth. It'll be something, but in the 26 lottery, fees or something will apply.
To some set of people, that subset will be determined at a later date.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's other confusing part. But and for those in the previous 25, effective as of October 1st here, does not apply.
Correct. Yeah. If you've already won the lottery, then you are good.
Okay. I think that those are the main questions. I mean, yeah. Any closing comments?
Not really. You can follow me on Twitter at Logan Ullyott. Uh, you're only going to be able to spell that if my name is currently up on the screen. I don't know if it is. Um, and I'm generally following the news pretty closely there, and trying to inject some sanity into this whole conversation. So if you want to understand what's kind of really happening, and if you're impacted, um, that may be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Uh, Compass visas, if you're looking to, understand visa process a little better, or have an employer that wants to hire you something, hire you with a visa, we'd be happy to help you there.
Hmm.
Um, but not really much else to plug.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure and share the links with the community. Uh, appreciate your time, and I love your comment. Take a breath. I mean, that's what we got to do right now. So just take a breath and see where it goes.
Totally. Thanks for putting this together. Thanks for having us. This was great. Look
All
forward to
right.
doing more of these.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.